Hey, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, President at Career Club, and welcome to another episode of Career Club Live. We've got a great episode keyed up for you guys today. First thing I want to say, though, is my internet connection is not great today, so it may be a little jumpy, and if it gets to be too much of a problem, we've got one workaround idea, and we may need to just reschedule, but I think we'll be able to get through it. So in any event, appreciate your patience. If you've been faced with an unwanted career transition, obviously layoffs are in the news all the time. Something that we'd like to make available to anybody who's listening to this is a free copy of our online job search course called Making Your Own Weather. And if you will just email me at bob@career.club, I would be more than happy to make that available to you. Again, just email me at bob@career.club, and we can send that over to you at no obligation, no sales pitch. We just want to help people that find themselves in job transition right now to land to their next place as quickly as possible. Similarly, if you're an employer and you're having to make employee transition conversations, again, email me at bob@career.club, and we've got a new offering called NACS Placement that takes a more human-centric approach to outplacement. This is a live event, as we've already determined. So if you've got any questions, comments, want to let us know where you're calling in from, we'd love to hear from you. And lastly, I want to say thank you to my colleague, Joey, who is doing a great job of keeping these episodes fresh and working great. And is even, as you might have just seen a second ago, has a secondary avatar for me in case the video doesn't work. So all that said, we are very, very pleased to welcome my friend, former client, Lori Stillman. Lori, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Great to be here.
Hey, no, it's so great to have you. So as I said, you were my client once upon a time. You led a really, really sharp team, and been fortunate to be able to stay in touch with you over the years, and really glad to have you. By way of introduction for folks, Lori is Vice President of Research and Education at NACS. And NACS is the leading trade organization supporting the convenience and fuel channels. And if my memory is serving me well, I think it's 1,300 retailers and 1,600 suppliers. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. So with all that again, welcome.
Thanks. Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So where are you calling in from today?
I am in Alexandria, Virginia, right in the middle of government Mecca, where every trade association, I think, in the world is probably based or has some sort of a home spot.
I think that's right. So as is our tradition on Career Club Live, we like to ask just a handful of icebreaker questions to help people get to know you a little bit better. So you're in Alexandria, Virginia now, but where were you born and raised?
I was born in a very small town that was more populated by cows and corn than people, but Redbud, Illinois, so about 35 miles southeast of St. Louis.
Oh, that sounds like God's country out there. And then where did you go to school?
Maryville University in St. Louis. I had a very atypical college education because I worked full-time. And Maryville back in the day was one of the few that had an adult learning program that offered great education opportunities for those of us who worked full-time and slogged it through on nights and weekends.
Well, that's a topic for another day, that just anything that's helping people that don't traditionally have the opportunity to get an education and really advance their career, I'm a huge fan of. Just a little bit about your family.
So I am married, been married soon to be 23 years, met a boy on a plane, and the rest is history. We have a daughter, Grace, who is a sophomore in college. So she'll be 20 here shortly and ready to take her bite at the world. Awesome.
So I alluded to the fact that we had met back when you were my client.
Right.
Do you mind just sharing with folks a little bit about your career arc?
Yeah, so I started at an ad agency in St. Louis while I was going to college, and two things happened while I was there. I was the only person who knew how to turn on the computer, and so I got very quickly exposed to Harvard Graphics and Lotus 1-2-3, and so because we were an ad agency supporting Ralston Purina brands, I had really my first love of market research and CPG. So I went from there to ConAgra, who at the time had their frozen food division based in St. Louis. Was recruited by Nielsen back in the late 90s or late 80s. Ugh, I wish it was the late 90s. It'd make me younger. And I worked for them on and off for about 18 years, ultimately running business development for them for North America. And then I went into the sales and marketing agency world, did a little bit of time with the military resale system, had a quick cup of coffee at IRI on my way to Advantage, where I was for 5 years before joining NACS in 2019.
Yep, and we met while you were at Advantage, and as I said, you led a very, very sharp team. Tough negotiator, by the way. So if you're listening to this, and then lastly, where do we find you when you're not doing all things NACS?
Well, there's either one or two places. If the stars align, then I'm at my home in West Virginia, which is on a lake and affords me an opportunity to start my day on a paddleboard in the summer, or outside just taking a nice walk in the cold in the winter. Or we live here in Northern Virginia, and for fun, I like to do a little antiquing. So if there's a good place to go junk and find some things, you might find me there.
Oh, that's fun. West Virginia is spectacular. We used to drive there to go see our son when he was in college in North Carolina from Ohio, and having to go through the mountains. Yeah. It's
God's country. And it's just one of those places that is so rich in natural resources and beauty, and yet has so many opportunities from a career perspective. It's a pretty depressed economy by and large. And so, when I was at Nielsen, I had an opportunity to do a fair amount of offshoring of work, because that was kind of the opportunity of the day. And boy, I wish I would have known that places like rural West Virginia and Kentucky and other places existed, because there's great people, super friendly, who know the U.S. economy and are certainly much more adept at probably stepping into those roles with the right training and resources.
Could not agree with you more. So that's great. I learned a couple of things along the way here, so that was fun too. So normally the way we do these, and the way we'll do it today, is we'd love to just kind of talk shop for a few minutes. I'm very, very keen to learn more about the convenience channel at large, but then also leave some time at the end to get some career lessons from you. Again, I feel like I've already learned a couple of things that will be quite helpful as we go. But just starting off with shop stuff. Can you explain what the mission of NACS is for folks who may not be familiar with it?
Yeah, so NACS is the acronym for the National Association of Convenience Stores. So right square in the middle, we are all about advancing convenience and fuel retailing. And we like to really look at the work that we do on three planes. Advocacy, because we are a lobby organization, so the issues that matter to our retailers are certainly issues that we take on in earnest. Second is about knowledge. And so I run research and education. So that's right in the epicenter of how we like to deliver content and insights to the industry. And the third is about connections, because retail, like many industries, is very much a relationship-driven business. And so the opportunities that we can bring folks together to share and learn is super important to us. And then everything we do stems from those three areas.
Yeah. And this may be a kind of a weird way to start, but are there, as people start to get a hold of the research that you're doing and really helping folks understand the opportunities within the C-store channel, do you find that there are misconceptions or misperceptions that people have about that particular channel?
Well, I think it's a very misunderstood channel from the standpoint that it's very fragmented, right? So we have, 150,000 U.S. convenience store locations. More than 90,000 of them are single store locations. And so there's a very, very, very long tail. And so while, some of the top retailers that everybody knows and loves, you can run them off the list, Sheetz, Wawa, 7-Eleven, Casey's, et cetera, very big, very forward in terms of their digital skills, their food service offer, their ability to deliver fueling at scale to customers on their forecourt. It's still a very long tail, and different operators are certainly evolving. We're seeing a tremendous amount of consolidation. We're seeing an awful lot of adoption of technology, which is really, really exciting. We serve over 165 million guests every single day in our channel. That's half the U.S. population coming in and out of the convenience store. I know, every single day. A colleague just shared a statistics with me the other day that I really found interesting, which is if you look at the total store count of grocery, drug, dollar, McDonald's, and Starbucks, have to add all of their locations in the U.S. up to get to the same number of convenience stores. And so I think because we are not, we don't have the same brand on our door, location by location, people don't understand how big we are, how close we are. One of the things that I think is a pretty interesting statistic is 80% of U.S. consumers live within 10 miles of a convenience store. 50% live within a mile. We are a part of every community. So not only do we deliver scale in terms of just the number of locations, but the proximity that we offer is equally important. And so we're really embedded into the communities that we serve. It's a very community-oriented industry. A lot of giving back. Over $1 billion was given back last year by convenience store operators to the communities that they serve. And so it makes you feel really good about being a part of it. And of course, people say convenience, has changed, and e-commerce has completely changed the game. But what we give is the opportunity to walk into a location, somebody knows you, sees you, serves you, and can still make that transaction in a couple of minutes if that's what you want, or potentially offer an opportunity to sit down, have a great cup of coffee and a sandwich and catch up on some emails. So convenience, in my opinion, is no longer just a place, but it's actually an outcome. And it's what people consider convenient at different parts of the day are different. And we're really better positioned than most to be able to meet those different needs throughout the day.
Yeah, real quickly, I'm really struck, if I heard you correctly, 150,000 outlets in the U.S., 90,000 are single location.
Correct.
So you talk about being able to truly build one-to-one relationships with your customers. I mean, that is, I don't know where else you find that, unless maybe we're talking hair salons or something like that. Yeah, but and then the cumulative total of outlets, and you started adding McDonald's and Starbucks on top of dollar grocery and drug. Holy cow!
Right,
that is a giant distribution footprint, right? And one of the things that you and I had talked about, and I think we were not too far into the pandemic, back in 2020, you and I had connected, and you were sharing with me some things that, like, and I don't want to lead the witness too much, but some of the how convenience stores really stepped into the gap and became a place of not just convenience, but of necessity.
Right. So we were super, super fortunate to be considered an essential retail, right? So our stores stayed open. And our stores had products that, quite frankly, weren't the lead products. We certainly have categories that people know us for and want to come and deliver, but we were open, and when they couldn't find their favorite brand of, paper towels or milk or eggs, they knew that corner store might just have it. And so all of a sudden, we started to see traffic coming into our stores that might not have been in our stores for, a long time. And the combination of the tremendous work that this industry has done over the last couple of years to really evolve their food offer, much more fresh food, fresh prepared foods, really, the cleanliness that was super hyper focused on during the pandemic. All of a sudden we had customers walking in going, wow, this is a pretty great store. I can get my gas, I can get my soda and my milk and a fresh salad, and I don't need to go anywhere else. And so we started to get eyeballs on us that might not have been in the store in a while. And that's become the great trial, if you will. And so now it's just about how do we continue to deliver on that value proposition so those customers who tried us during the pandemic continue to come back.
Yeah, and so our friend Hunter Thurman at Alpha Diver makes a great comment here, and it picks up on what you were saying, Lori, which is the nature of convenience shifting via different contexts throughout the day, right? Needing my cup of coffee in the morning, I might need gasoline during the middle of the day, and I need to do a quick fill-in trip before I come home. Like, all of those are just different use cases. I could be work from home now. I just want to get the crap out of the house.
Right, exactly.
Just go sit down and, have a nice salad or a sandwich and just be out, but it's Wi-Fi enabled and it meets a need. And so much of retailing is about context. And it seems like convenience stores are very malleable to be able to adapt to a lot of different need states throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. It's a little bit easier to pivot a 3,000 or 5,000 square foot box than it is, a big grocery store or a big restaurant with a very, very expensive fresh menu. Our operators have done a great job of paying attention to how those day parts have shifted. Because certainly in the beginning, right, we saw coffee business in the morning completely disrupted, and it still has not recovered back to where it was. But we have opportunities when somebody is in the morning to get a cup of coffee to remind them that they don't need to make another stop or run out at lunch to get a fresh sandwich or salad. We can package that and go. We can remind them that if they're going to be grabbing dinner on the way home, that we have opportunities for them to have, a great entree and a side and a dessert, and they can pick it up and have it ready on the way home. And so the challenge to the operator is to pay attention to how the day part is shifting and to make sure they're changing how they're communicating to those customers ahead of those day parts so that they know, rather than running to your favorite QSR restaurant up the street, when I'm getting gas, I can go inside and get a equally quality, fresh meal made to order or prepared for me to take home. And so there's some great opportunities for our industry to message differently and pay attention to how the buying behaviors of the consumer is shifting throughout the day. Nothing but opportunity is what I tell folks.
It really does seem to be. One of the things that you had shared with me, I was hoping you could expound on, is the demographic makeup of the convenience store and what people think it is and what it is.
Yeah, it's funny. Certainly in your past and mine, data has been a big part of what we look at. And there's been a traditional way that this industry has looked at who the customer is. Matter of fact, when I joined NACS, they even kind of referred to him as Bubba, right? So there was this very picture of a hardworking guy on his way to work, getting his coffee, maybe getting his eyes, potentially tobacco or what have you. And what we learned during the pandemic and what we're seeing in the research that we're doing and the research that others are doing is our female shopper is a much bigger piece of our customer base than we ever realized. Now, when that pivot took place, I can't put my finger on it. I think that certainly as we heightened our focus on making sure that our facilities were well lit and bright, so that mom was comfortable coming in if she had her children, taking them into a store that she knew what she was walking into, making a much more concentrated effort to having fresh food choices and not everything is potentially prepared or bagged, where mom might say, gee, that's not really what I want to serve my family or my children or even myself. So changing the offer, changing just how clean and bright and well lit and accommodating the store is, has allowed us to open up and really be much more inviting to the female shopper. And interestingly enough, we saw really during the pandemic, that's where we saw that number jump even further, because many of those shoppers who do the primary shop for their family, they weren't coming to convenience because they were going to grocery or they were going to mass to fulfill those needs. And out of necessity, they kind of walked in and went, wow, like this isn't the same convenience store that I grew up with. I can come here and I feel good about coming here. And it's been really great to see operators embrace that and continue to evolve that. We have a member who was just sharing with me some work that they're doing with computer vision, where they're just having cameras capture the demographics of the population on their lot. Who's getting gas but not coming in? Who's getting gas, parking, and coming in? And they too have been really, really pleasantly surprised at the strength of their female customer base that they just weren't paying attention to the extent that they know.
Well, what you said, you don't know when it started, and obviously I don't either, but if it wouldn't be a terrible hypothesis to at least start with, maybe the pandemic had something to do with it. And the pandemic seemed to really create a lot of trial. Where, so like all of my habits have been disrupted. And so now I'm kind of getting out of my usual little path that I go down because for whatever reason, I can't do my usual habit. So now I'm looking for alternatives. And to your point, there's this discovery that happens like, well, wait a minute, this isn't the gas station that I remember. This is actually, it's kind of a restaurant. It's kind of a Starbucks. Yeah, there's gasoline here too. And then so the discovery part that the pandemic seemed to engender, and the real tale of the tape is just because I tried it doesn't mean I go back. Repeat.
That's right.
And that you all have been able to hold on to this female shopper who didn't do it out of desperation, but now is doing it out of choice is very telling.
Yeah, and I think, the message to the supplier side of our business is, pay attention. Right. When you have 165 million people coming into outlet every single day, but you take your innovation to mass or our grocery. And yet in some categories, we are the lion's share of that category sales. So, bring your innovation here, because those shoppers are on a discovery mission. They're looking for the next great candy bar, the next great salty snack, the next great, beer or carbonated soft drink. And if we're getting it 6 months after everybody else, then you're missing an opportunity to really make an impact on a shopper and a large set of shoppers very early in the buying cycle. So
that's a great insight, because if you think about like a lot of food products, they will start in the natural channel, gain some momentum, gain customer feedback, and then be able to go tell that sell-in story to their big box retailers. And it seems like for some of the categories you just ticked off, the convenience channel is the perfect place to go start, some of those launch products, branch into new categories, et cetera.
Certainly in the advent of digital, because I think the other thing that's really exciting that's taking place in our channel is how retailers are really embracing digital apps, loyalty programs, certainly trying to get in the game to be available to online order and delivery, whether that's buy online, pick up in store, or have it ready at the drive-through, or hand it over to a third-party delivery company. There's lots of opportunities to have a digital shelf that's much bigger than perhaps the store space itself can avail itself to. And again, knowing who those customers are that are routinely buying in categories and using them as your innovation focus group to say, hey, what do you think about this? Should we bring this into our store? There's lots of ways we can bring the innovation to the eyes of the customer much more quickly.
Well, that's sort of the next place that I wanted to bounce to, which is digital, and how you guys are educating your operators to embrace digital. And could you share a little bit with what you're sharing with them and how it's going?
Yeah. So I have to tell you the story of how we kind of stumbled across this, because it also gives me a chance to talk about one of the things that we do in the area of knowledge at NACS, which is we have 5 great executive education programs that our supplier members endow but allow retailers to participate. So, imagine being a retailer and getting to go to Kellogg for a week and doing an executive ed program on marketing, or Cornell on leadership, or Wharton on financial. Well, I did one at MIT on innovation. And so I was in a group of people. This was in the early days of the pandemic. And, of course, everybody's scratching their head trying to figure out how quickly they can stand up the last mile solution. And we'd just gotten some data that gave us a statistic around the percentage of customers in our stores who in the next 30 minutes were going to leave and go to a quick service restaurant. And so to me, all of a sudden, this light went on that said, wow, we're so focused on last mile, and yet first mile is a bigger opportunity for us. Mm-hmm. So how do we make sure that the customers we already have really know and understand and can have access to the depth and breadth of the products and services that we carry? And so we continued down this journey. I ended up late one night and, with a girlfriend running around in the community where I live to every single convenience store with my iPhone saying, and I'm not going to say, hey, who, because she'll answer me. She's laying right here. So let's say I go, hey, Google, where's the nearest ATM? While I have my elbow against an ATM machine inside a store, or standing in the middle of a car wash. Hey, Google, where's the nearest car wash? Where's the nearest cup of coffee, beer? I rattled off all these things at each different location. And every single time I was being sent to a standalone car wash, a bank for an ATM, a beer and wine store for liquor, even though the store I was in already had the product or service that I was looking for. And it said to me, we don't talk about everything else that we do as an industry other than gas and convenience as a place. But of course, in the advent of digital, nobody is saying, where's the nearest convenience store if they need an ATM? They're saying, where's the nearest ATM? And if it happens to be inside a convenience store, all the better. And so we continue to work on this. And so in October of last year, we launched this product called Thriver. And Thriver is built on a Soci platform. It's about enabling localized marketing. So think about all of the places where, as a retailer, you need every single site to show up. Yelp, Facebook, Foursquare, inside a car's connected map, Apple Maps, Google Maps, etc. How do you bring all of that together so that as an operator, you can manage all of that content? So you want your listings right, because we know if the address is wrong or the phone number is wrong or the brand has changed hands and it's still set up in Google under the old brand, they're not going to find it. We also know that today people pay attention to what other people say, right? So if the comments being made are not so positive, then when I see that listing show up and I start to read comments that are being made, I might not go there. And if I look at the the 5-star rating and it's only a 2-star rating, even worse. And so what the Thriver platform does, it allows an operator to manage all of that. And what I say is it allows their digital forecourt light to be as bright as the physical light on the corner of their parking lot. So when and where somebody is looking, they can find what it is they're looking for. And if it happens to be inside one of our stores, all the better for us.
Yeah. And real quick, a couple questions. So Hunter's asking, what percent of stores have a separate QSR brand attached? I know there's like Popeyes is next to a Shell, or whoever Subway tends to partner with. Do you have a notion for how often they're co-branded?
I do not. I will tell you that it is growing. And in many cases, those businesses are trapped as to, again, think about a map, 2 separate pins on a map. So we don't have that universe, but we know from the food service sales that our members report to us that when they are inside the building on the same P&L, not run as a separate standalone business, that number is growing exponentially. And so food service, and really it's almost like a QSR with a lot of convenient products for some operators, as opposed to the flip, which is a convenience store that now has a QSR next to it. You're really seeing the two come together. I think the industry is kind of bifurcating to what I would call very QSR forward operators and the more legacy models, which might have a food offer, but it might be more of a prepared, shipped into the store, roll or grill kind of an opportunity, rather than the more advanced food service operations that we see so many convenience stores embracing today.
Yeah, so if I could read between the lines, you guys would tend to advocate co-branding with an existing QSR brand?
I don't think we have a position on that. I think what we see is where it makes sense to have a food offer in a market that you have, do it. I'm not going to advocate whether you have your own brand or somebody else's brand that's more recognized. I think there's a lot of great retailers out there that have different thesis that they're using. And then there are some food service operators who are only located in convenience, but it's still a franchise operation. And so I think that's yet a third model of, it's not a store, but it's a brand of products that people know when it's there, they're going to understand the quality of the product that they're getting.
Yep. And then marrying St. Louis and marketing, Dave Menifee says, and looking through the lens of connection or innovation, which we were talking about a minute ago, it's a richer perspective than just convenience. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think, innovation is the lifeblood of every business, right? And what we see now, certainly in the advent of digital technology, is convenience is, again, it's an outcome of a great experience. And innovation is what's going to allow you to take that experience to the next level. I have a really wise retailer that is a part of a research committee that I run on behalf of the industry. And he made a comment a couple of weeks ago that I have found myself shamelessly repeating, and so I'm going to do it again. But he said, the opportunity for us in convenience is to decommoditize the commodity. And truer words have never been spoken, because at the end of the day, that 12-ounce can of Coke, that 3-ounce bag of Lay's potato chip, it doesn't look different from one store to the other. It's the same soda. It's the same salty snacks. But the experience that the customer has when they come into the store, how they belong to that store, that's where the real innovation is coming. And we're seeing that innovation manifest itself in how they're rethinking the box, how they're redesigning the store, how they're bringing digital to forefront. I mean, we have 2 major retailers in our space who in the last, 3 months have announced retail media networks, which is not something most people would associate in our space. So they're thinking about, how do I build connections with shoppers? And then how do I leverage that first party data to allow the brands that sell in my store to also have connections with those shoppers? And I think that's exciting. It's going to continue to push the industry forward. Yeah,
very cool. Well, in the interest of time, I guess one last question. Is there anything that we haven't talked about in all things C-Store that you would really like to make sure that we get across?
We've covered a lot. And I think I would just simply say convenience stores are pushing very hard to continue to evolve their offer. And we are a very resilient industry. We have a lot of headwinds pushing against us right now, from tobacco legislation to fuel mandates that have been kind of at the bottom bedrock of our operations. And these retailers continue to look for new ways to reinvent and stay relevant to serve the communities that they're a part of. And so we're going to be here for the long haul, and I can't be more excited about what the outlook for the industry is.
No, and again, I think you said it earlier, it's just all about opportunity. There seems to be so much opportunity there. Pivoting to the career side,
Okay.
of our conversation, if we could for a minute. Again, I think you've had a really interesting, and you continue to progress and impact the industry, different channels. It's phenomenal, and it's always been kind of knowledge, insight, data led, which is great. One of the favorite questions I like to ask our guests is, if you were talking to 28-year-old Lori, what advice would you give her? What career advice would you give her?
Well, first, the career advice. Okay, I almost went down a different set of advice. So 20-year-old Lori did make some really good decisions on the personal side. But career Lori's, stay curious. Yeah, that's a conversation we can have over a glass of wine someday.
I was going to say.
I think it's just about staying curious. I think, I'm a continual learner. I am the kind of person that, and of course, modern technology makes it fun, because when I drive across a bridge that's named after somebody, I can immediately answer my question of, well, who is Rudy and why did he get a bridge named after him? And I can quickly Google him and find out, right? So for me, it's about always learning, challenging kind of the status quo in a constructive way for the sake of improvement. So that's the first one that I would say. And then I think I had lots of opportunities where doors were shut in my face. I was selling when I was 28. I was running business development for a software division at Nielsen. And, it was kind of like what I'm trying to do today with Thriver. Only back in those days, it was with space management, which was, again, kind of a new technology for the day. And got a lot of, well, honey, I don't think we need to do that here, kind of mindset. And to just keep pushing back up the car, take a slightly different direction to get to the yes. And so I think it's just that persistence, that tenacity of not accepting no, but finding why there's a no and seeing if there's a way to just overcome it. And then I think the biggest advice is, again, retail and women has not always been a friendly place. And I think, I still see this today. Women don't have to give up their femininity. They don't have to give up what makes us special, what allows us to be different in the boardroom, bring a different perspective. We don't have to be one of the boys to be welcomed by the boys. We need to bring our best self and our best talent, and allow that to be the reason why we get the seat at the table.
Yeah, just on that last point, that's kind of the definition of diversity. Because the opposite is homogeneity. So if I'm just trying to regress to the mean, that is the definition of not diverse. Right. And I told this to you in the pre-call, and I'll say it while we're talking here live, is one of the reasons that I like to have women executives come on is modeling for my daughter what's possible. Right? She's 32. She's really bright. She's doing very well in her career. And we're in 2023, and she runs into headwinds and, well, honey, and everything you said. And, I want her to know and to hear, not from her dad, but from women that are, a couple chapters ahead in the book of like, here's how you do it. You don't have to lose your femininity. I think that's great. Persistence, that's a salesperson's DNA. Like if you don't have anything else going on, you can at least be persistent, because most people will quit. And, one, it's just quitting. And two is, and you really said this in a different way, but creativity. It's like, well, let's do figure this out. Let's back the car up and let's try it a different way. Let's find out why is that obstacle there and how do we go solve for that? It wasn't a no. It was a no to that particular approach, but maybe not to a solution to that problem.
Absolutely.
So I think it's brilliant. And then lastly, on curiosity, we've had a few dozen guests on now, and the number one attribute by far, if we did sort of a meta-analysis, is curiosity. People want you to genuinely want to continue to learn, and as Charlie's saying, they're always learning, always growing. So that's exactly it.
Yeah, because I think modern day HR leaders, they don't know what to do with that. When you say, I'm looking for somebody who's got some curiosity, they're like, what test do I give them for that? And I think there's great conversations you can have with people to understand how curious they are. But yeah, I think it's a secret weapon.
Yep. One of the things that we have talked about in previous conversations is the notion of vulnerability. And that is very powerful concept and behavior. And I was wondering if you could explain to folks what you mean by that and why it's important to you.
I think that as a woman, especially, being vulnerable is something I think too many of us sometimes hide. And so we put this wall up, we put this veneer up because we don't want to be thought as overly emotional or sensitive. But yet I think vulnerability is the doorway to empathy, which is such an important skill for a leader. And I think that it is okay to show vulnerability. It's okay to cry when somebody is telling you about a tragic thing that's happened in their life so that you can commiserate with them. It's okay to take a minute and catch your breath when you hear something that is hard, and let people see you be human. Because that humanness will draw people in. And I think the walls that we put up, and I've been guilty of it in points in my life where the wall was up as a self-protection. And then I wondered why nobody was getting close. And it's because my signals were stay away, right? And so I think vulnerability as a leader especially allows your people to tell you where they need help, where things aren't working, where they see opportunities for the business to get better. And so I think vulnerability, again, super important, and male or female, I think it's something that we should take pride in demonstrating appropriately in the workplace.
Yeah, that just resonates with me so much. There's something, I think I'm getting this right, the vulnerability paradox. The thing that we admire in people so much is when they're actually being vulnerable and saying, you know what, I'm actually struggling with this. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, because it gives you permission, which is the empathy piece of it, right? To say me too. But it's the thing that we're sometimes the most afraid of giving. So that's the paradox, is we admire it so much in other people. Yeah. And yet we're afraid to give it sometimes. And men suffer from this just for different reasons.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a fear of being perceived as weak, which is not at all what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is being strong enough to show who you really are.
Exactly. Which maybe relates to the last point around authenticity. You know, and I know you like to talk about speaking your truth. Can you tell folks what that means to you?
Yeah. I just, I was raised the youngest of 4 kids. If I didn't speak up, I was ignored, right? It was just the nature of the busy household that we lived in. And so I think that in the workplace, being your authentic self means, not hiding who you are, not hiding your convictions, your beliefs, your faith, your perceptions on things. And again, not to be the contrarian in a conversation when your truth is different than others, but it adds to that diversity of thought and of opinion to really speak your truth, but also be willing to listen to the truth of others, right? It's a two-way street. And being authentic and saying, if you want me to accept you, then you need to accept me, and be willing to play both sides of that. I think about, colleagues that I've worked with, and when I read their obituary and I hear things that were important to them in their life, and I go, wow, I never knew. Right. I didn't know that he volunteered, for 30 years at a children's adoption center or whatever was their passion outside of the office. Like, I want to know those things about the people that I work with and the people who work for me. And I want them to know the things that matter to me when I'm not in the office, because again, it allows us to be human, be real, and to lead people to places they otherwise aren't going to be able to get to.
Yeah. So as I knew this would be, awesome conversation, Lori. Thank you. I've admired and respected you for a long time, and I'm glad that I was able to share a lot of your expertise and wisdom with folks who are watching this now and will be listening later on podcasts. But I just want to say thank you very much. This has been really, really fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And so just to wrap this up, everybody, next 4 episodes coming up on Career Club Live. We're not going to lose any momentum. We've got Brian Choi, who's the president of the Food Institute. We've got Dory Clark. If you don't know who Dory is a professor at Columbia and Duke University and a frequent contributor to Harvard Business Review, author of 4 best-selling books as ranked by the Wall Street Journal. And then I think the next one is going to be Katie George. Katie is the Chief People Officer for McKinsey & Company, one of the top 10 managers at McKinsey. So the hits keep coming. But Lori, you got us started off very, very well in February. And for that, I'm very, very grateful.
Happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks.